You believe you live with a cat, but what if the cat is living with you? What if its silent watchfulness, its refusal to obey, its uncanny gaze, are not quirks of behavior, but reflections of a psychic reality you have not yet dared to face? What if the presence of a cat in your house is not mere companionship, but a visitation from the depths, from the unconscious itself? Have you ever asked why this animal, so independent, so elusive, has entered your space? Why do some feel inexplicably drawn to cats, while others feel a primal unease? What part of you does the cat mirror that you have forgotten? Is it freedom? Is it instinct? Is it the mystery of the feminine soul you have exiled from consciousness? You may think you chose the cat, but symbols are never chosen. They appear when the psyche is ready. This is not about pets. This is about projection, about the return of repressed autonomy, about the strange companion that lives not only in your home, but in your soul. And so I ask you, what does the cat in your house say about the parts of yourself that do not ask permission, that do not serve, that will not be tamed? The cat has entered for a reason. Are you willing to listen? Introduction: the silent gaze of the unconscious. A solitary cat sits in the center of an empty room. The walls are white, the furniture sparse, the air motionless. It does not move toward you, nor does it retreat. It does not demand affection, nor does it offer comfort. Its eyes meet yours, not with warmth nor threat, but with something older, something untouched. Behind its gaze, there is time. Behind its posture, stillness. What does it mean? You approach, and yet you do not touch. You sense somewhere beneath thought that this creature, though small, though quiet, carries presence. The silence between you is not absence. It is awareness. The cat does not flee. It does not submit. It watches, and in that watching, you feel something ancient awaken inside you. What is this creature that lives beside us, yet never truly belongs to us? What is this presence that lies in our beds, walks in our kitchens, curls beside our fires, yet remains entirely apart, sovereign, unknowable? We feed it, care for it, give it names, and yet it answers only when it chooses. It dwells with us, but never under us. Its loyalty is not obedience. Its affection, not guarantee. What does this reveal? Not about the cat, but about us. We say we choose our animals. But I have seen in countless dreams and lives that certain animals choose us. Or rather, they appear when the psyche demands them. The dog appears when loyalty is needed, the serpent when transformation calls, the horse when the instinctual drives must be harnessed. But the cat, it appears not as a servant of the ego's desire, but as a sovereign envoy of something wholly other. The cat is not simply an animal. It is an image, a psychic constellation. It walks not only through the house, but through the dream, the myth, the memory. It arrives like a symbol in active imagination, uninvited, unpredictable, and always charged with meaning. It is the anima of the house, quiet, autonomous, half visible, half invisible. It does not live in your home. It lives in your field. And when it looks at you, something in your unconscious shifts. We live in a time that misunderstands symbol. We rush to interpret, to label, to tame. But the symbolic image is not meant to be solved. It is meant to be encountered, to be held, contemplated, felt. The cat does not ask to be known. It asks to be honored, to be seen not as object, but as presence, not as decoration, but as threshold. I have said, the unconscious is not chaotic. It is ordered by meaning, but it does not speak in concepts. It speaks in symbols, and animals are among its oldest tongue. They carry instincts, energies, truths that words cannot convey. To dream of a cat is to be visited by the unknown feminine. To live with a cat is to be invited daily to face what cannot be controlled. We project onto cats our longing for grace, for detachment, for mystery. But we also project our fear of independence, of solitude, of feminine power that does not yield. In this way, the cat becomes not just an animal, but a mirror. And the image in that mirror is not always comforting. Why does the cat disturb some and soothe others? Why does its gaze provoke unease in those who cling to clarity and logic? Because it sees without judging, because it moves without permission, because it exists in the liminal space, the space between wild and tame, between domestic and divine, between presence and absence. It is both with you and beyond you. And this the ego resists, but the self, that deeper center beyond the ego, recognizes the cat. It knows the symbol, even if the mind does not. It senses behind the twitch of the tail, the echo of something sacred. Not because the cat is divine, but because it constellates divinity in the psyche. Not because it is magical, but because it evokes the forgotten magic within. This is not a meditation on pets. This is not about behavior training or companionship. This is about the soul. The image of the cat as it emerges from the unconscious, from history, from myth. This is about the cat as an emissary of the self, demanding not obedience but relation, offering not comfort but confrontation with the unknown feminine within. We live in houses, but we rarely dwell in ourselves. The cat crosses that threshold. It appears at the edge of consciousness, on the windowsill, on the dream staircase, behind the mirror. It is the familiar of the soul, not because we understand it, but because it has always been there, watching. When a cat enters the home, it does not simply move into space. It moves into psychic structure. It reshapes the field. You do not train it. It trains you to pay attention, to slow down, to endure ambiguity. It teaches without teaching, and it demands without asking. This too is archetypal. The paradox is this: we believe we choose our animals, but in truth, the psyche chooses its symbols. And when the cat appears, it does not appear for entertainment. It appears as a sign. Something in the unconscious has ripened. Some forgotten instinct, some repressed intuition, some unacknowledged interiority has stirred, and now it walks beside you on silent pause. To those who live in rigid logos, in endless activity, in externalized identity, the cat is often unsettling. It sleeps in the day, it watches at night, it disappears when called, it returns without apology. It mirrors what the ego cannot claim, the soul's capacity to exist for itself. The feminine unconscious is not passive, it is vast, alive, hidden, and terribly patient. The cat lives there, not as symbol alone, but as presence. As the whisper you silence, the intuition you dismiss, the sensuality you fear. It is not that the cat is the feminine, but that it carries its quality. What does it mean that a creature can be so near, yet so untouched, so intimate, yet so autonomous, so dependent on your care, and yet so indifferent to your desire? It means this: there are parts of your psyche that cannot be owned, that do not exist to serve your goals, that live by older rhythms, older rules. The cat reminds you of these. It walks through your room as the moon walks through your dream, uninvited, unbothered, illuminating what you would rather forget. This inquiry is not into animal behavior. It is an inquiry into presence, into instinct, into projection and symbol, and the subtle return of soul through image. The cat in your house is not just an animal, it is a question. Who are you when you are not in control? What in you does not belong to you? What part of your soul watches you in silence, waiting for you to turn inward? This is not about cats. This is about the part of you that the cat constellates, the part that you cannot command, cannot possess, cannot explain. It is the psyche's reminder that the world is not yours to own, but yours to dwell in, to honor, to listen to. And so we begin, not with conclusions, but with questions. What does the cat symbolize? What does it awaken? What does it reveal about the unconscious life you have not yet lived? And let us follow it now, step by step. Let us move into the shadows, into the silence, into the gaze. Let us now walk further into the inner temple, into the shimmering shadows of the mysterious feminine. The cat is not merely a reflection of mystery, it is its emissary. It lives, moves, and watches from the hidden depths of the psyche that the ego cannot command. Part 1. The cat as archetype of the mysterious feminine. Across cultures, across millennia, across languages not yet written, the cat appears, not as pet, as symbol, as presence, as shadow. It walks beside goddesses, sleeps beneath crescent moons, guards temple altars, and winds itself around the legs of those who dare to stand still. In ancient Egypt, she was Bastet, cat-headed goddess of the home and protector of the pharaoh. Bastet was no simple protector. She bore the dual nature of the feminine soul, nurturer and wrathbringer, sensual and fierce. Her feline form was not chosen at random. It symbolized a power that cannot be dominated, a feminine mystery that guards but does not serve, that seduces but does not surrender. In other lands too, the cat was revered. In Japan, the maneki neko, or beckoning cat, brought fortune and mystery. In Norse myth, the goddess Freyja, goddess of love, war, and death, traveled in a chariot pulled by two giant cats. In Hindu mythology, the cat was sacred to Shakti, the protector of children. Everywhere it appears, it is never background. It is liminal, watching from the edge of firelight. The cat is not the masculine hero. It does not conquer. It does not charge. It slips through the boundary between day and night, conscious and unconscious. Its silence is not absence. It is interiority. In this way, the cat becomes more than image. It becomes carrier of the anima, that feminine archetype within the psyche which remains autonomous, enigmatic, and untouched by ego will. The anima is not woman, but the inner feminine soul within every man. And where the anima is unrecognized, she appears in projection onto a lover, a dream figure, or an animal. The cat, in this sense, becomes a living projection screen for that which the ego cannot contain. Mystery, intuition, lunar knowledge, eroticism, and refusal. To contrast, the dog. The dog, loyal, relational, eager to please, is the servant of the day world. It reflects back to us our ideals of goodness, order, discipline. The cat does not. It is nocturnal, autonomous. It gives and withdraws as it wills. It demands relationship on its own terms. This mirrors the nature of the unconscious feminine. She is not here to obey. She is here to be known, not by conquest, but by encounter. And this encounter is not always pleasant. It is not designed for ego gratification. It is designed for transformation, for depth. Consider the patient, a woman in her late 30s, withdrawn, logical, successful. She came not for analysis, but for clarity. Her life was orderly, yet barren. No dreams, no desire, no conflict. But in the quiet, something stirred. Then came the dream, a narrow corridor, dimly lit. A black cat leads her down a winding staircase into rooms she has never seen. Each room stranger than the last. One is filled with vines, another with water, another with mirrors. The cat never speaks. It moves. She follows. This dream, recurring over months, was not random. It was a map. The cat was not just a guide. It was the anima, drawing the patient into parts of herself she had sealed away. The room of vines, repressed sensuality. The room of mirrors, unmet self-reflection. The room of water, emotion uncried. The feminine unconscious does not speak in abstractions. It speaks in rooms, in roots, in bodies, in animals. And the cat, in this context, is the soul's quiet pull toward what has been exiled. The ego resists, but the psyche knows when the anima is denied, she becomes dangerous. She appears not as muse, but as seductress, saboteur, or siren. But when related to consciously, she becomes bridge. She becomes eros. Not sexualization, but relatedness. She brings depth to thought, warmth to abstraction, and soul to knowledge. The cat walks between these poles. It is not dangerous unless ignored. It does not become wrathful unless disrespected. It does not betray unless betrayed. Like the feminine soul, it requires reverence, not sentimentality, not idealization, but presence, mutuality. When the cat walks into the room, something shifts, not because of what it does, but because of what it refuses to do. It will not perform. It will not beg. It brings with it an aura of sovereignty that reveals the imbalance of our own inner world. In those who are overly rational, overly structured, overly aligned with the heroic ego, the cat appears like a riddle. It stares at you as if to say, you do not know yourself. It scratches when touched without permission. It disappears when clung to. It returns only when the field is open. And so the cat becomes a symbol of initiation, not grand initiation, not fire and thunder, but the quiet kind. The slow descent into what is not you, but is within you. The feminine not as gender, but as mode of being, as the part of the soul that waits, weaves, dreams, and listens. The part that does not need to prove itself, that simply is. In dreams, the cat leads. In life, the cat refuses. In both, it teaches. The psyche is not yours to command. The unconscious is not your servant. You may live in the house, but the soul opens the doors. The soul chooses the cat. I have seen again and again in analysis. The moment when a person dreams of a cat marks a transition. The beginning of interiority, of listening inward. The cat never drags you. It walks ahead. You must choose to follow. And what you follow is not logic, but mystery. The archetype of the mysterious feminine is not something to be solved. It is something to be related to. And the cat, as symbol, as presence, as psychic emissary, brings this relation into your home, into your psyche. You feed it, yes. You clean its litter, yes. But beneath these acts, you are entering a ritual, a quiet covenant. You are saying, consciously or not, I welcome into my life something that will never belong to me. And this is the first step towards psychic maturity. To allow mystery, to dwell beside what you cannot control, to love what does not need you, to sit in a room where a cat watches and realize it is you who are being seen. We move now into deeper territory, where image becomes projection, and the feline presence no longer merely haunts the threshold of the unconscious, but reveals its power through the shadowed feminine. The cat is not only anima, it is also sorceress, enchantress, carrier of rejected instinct and feared sovereignty. And what we cast onto it reveals what we refuse to claim in ourselves. Part 2, the cat and the sorceress, power and projection. The cat, when seen through myth and symbol, walks not only beside goddesses, but witches. It slips between the lines of sacred story and folk fear, resting comfortably in both. Where the priestess draws down the moon, the cat coils at her feet. Where the witch stands at the forest's edge, fire behind her, potion in hand, it is the cat who watches from the shadows. What is this image that recurs across cultures? Why does the cat so often become companion to the one who is feared for knowing too much? Why is it the familiar, not of saint, but of sorceress? Because the cat, like the sorceress, disturbs order, not by destroying it, but by revealing its incompleteness. The cat does not declare war on structure. It lives outside it. It slips through it. It follows its own rhythm. This is power, not as control, but as sovereignty. In folklore, the witch is rarely evil. She is powerful. She knows herbs, cycles, death, and rebirth. She is midwife, healer, outcast. And her cat, silent, watchful, is not her pet, but her reflection. Both are projections of the collective sphere of the autonomous feminine, the one who answers not to law, but to mystery. Projection is the psyche's way of externalizing what it cannot yet integrate. What we cannot hold within, we cast without. And so the cat becomes magical, treacherous, erotic, feared. It becomes what the ego dare not become. Self-possessed, unpredictable, fully alive. A man once came to me, troubled. He disliked cats, found them eerie, disloyal, untrustworthy. In dreams, he saw a black cat leap onto his chest, claw him, draw blood. He awoke breathless, disturbed not only by the image, but by the strange pleasure within the pain. I don't know what to make of it, he said. In time, he came to see the cat was not simply an intruder. It was his own rejected anima, his feeling function, his intuitive knowing, his sensuality, his capacity to receive rather than pursue. He had lived too long in logos, in linearity. The cat clawed not to harm, but to awaken, to cut through the hardened shell of identity and restore contact with the neglected inner feminine. The sorceress archetype is not a literal figure. It is a psychic constellation, especially potent in those who live in exile from their instinctual knowing. In women, this may appear as disowned rage, unclaimed eroticism, or spiritual intuition suppressed by persona. In men, it may emerge as a fear of emotional intimacy, mistrust of feminine energy, or over-reliance on control. And the cat, dwelling with such individuals, often becomes the emissary of these unmet powers. It acts strangely, appears in dreams, disrupts routines. One cannot command it. One must attend to it. And in that attention, projection begins to withdraw. The individual begins to see it is not the cat who is magical. It is my own soul mirrored there. In myth, Circe, the enchantress, lives surrounded by animals. They are not animals in the ordinary sense. They are men transformed by spell, returned to instinct. Circe does not destroy, she reveals. She returns the civilized to the wild, and it is no accident that those who fail to meet her consciously become beasts. This is the danger of unintegrated feminine power. It does not negotiate, it reflects. If one cannot meet it with awareness, it will take form in the world, as chaos, as seduction, as obsession, as the animal that enters your dream and tears at your identity. But if one can meet it consciously, then it becomes guide. The cat is this intermediary. It carries the power of instinctual knowing without the violence of eruption. It appears calmly, silently, yet charged with a presence that alters the psychic field. In its gaze, one sees not judgment, but depth, not instruction, but reflection. There is a peculiar phenomenon I have observed. Those most disturbed by cats are often those most alienated from their own soul. The cat, simply by being, constellates that which they repress. It becomes projection screen for fear, resentment, envy, unclaimed eroticism. The cat is cold, they say. The cat is manipulative. But what is really cold? What manipulates whom? This is not to glorify the cat, but to use it as symbol. We are not speaking of behavior, we are speaking of image, of presence, of what emerges when the ego meets something it cannot dominate. The cat, like the witch, does not ask for love. It asks for recognition. And where recognition is refused, projection grows. The individual may then fear, hate, or over-idealize the cat. Not because of the animal itself, but because of what it evokes. Another case, a woman lives alone. Her home is filled with books, order, light. She owns a cat whom she loves, but she dreams constantly of a larger cat, a panther watching her from the garden. It never enters. It waits. She feels both awe and fear. In analysis, it becomes clear the panther is her shadow, not the evil in her, but the power, the wild, the rage, the sexuality she has numbed, the voice she has silenced. Her house is her mind. The panther waits outside, not because it is unworthy, but because she will not let it in. The house cat is manageable, the panther is not. But both are parts of her. One is integrated, the other waits. And this is the task of the psyche, to make room for what is feared, not by surrendering to it, but by relating to it, by learning its name. In this way, the cat teaches, but it does not explain. It reveals by presence. It disrupts by being. It is, in the end, the soul's reminder that not all knowledge comes through thought, and not all transformation comes through will. The cat, companion of the sorceress, is not evil. It is unclaimed power. If we can meet it without projection, we begin to reclaim that power, not to dominate others, but to live more fully in ourselves. So I ask, when the cat in your life stares at you, what part of yourself is looking through its eyes? When it scratches, what has been neglected? When it disappears, what within you has been ignored? The answers are not in the cat. They are in you. The cat simply lives them unashamed. Let us now pass into a deeper symbolic chamber, one defined not by what the cat reveals to us, but what it refuses to relinquish: independence, autonomy, a psychic sovereignty that no amount of affection, training, or domestication can dissolve. The cat is not merely a companion, it is the mirror of the soul that remains unpossessed. Part 3, feline independence and the symbol of the unpossessed soul. The cat dwells with us. It shares our space, rests in our beds, stretches across our desks as we work. But let us be clear, it does not belong to us. It never did. The cat's body may reside in the house, but its soul moves in a realm untouched by our ownership. This is not a flaw, it is its nature. And that nature, when symbolically considered, reveals an archetypal truth. Not everything in the psyche can or should be possessed. The cat is presence without submission. It is nearness without dependency. It comes when it wills. It withdraws when it must. This disturbs many. For the modern ego, accustomed to utility, immediacy, and dominance, finds such autonomy unnerving. And so, unconsciously, the cat becomes a mirror, not of comfort, but of what lies beyond control. What does this autonomy symbolize? It reflects the unpossessed parts of our own soul, those aspects that do not obey our ego's plans, that refuse to conform to identity, productivity, or role. The deep instincts, the wild intuitions, the sensual, the creative, the irrational, these live within us but not under us. The cat, in this symbolic reading, is their ambassador. A woman once came to me with a peculiar bond to her cat. They lived in seeming harmony, yet her dreams betrayed something deeper. Again and again, she dreamt of being followed by wild tigers, not menacing, but watchful. They stalked her through forests, along city streets, even into her own home. "I'm not afraid," she told me, "but I don't understand. What do they want?" They wanted to be seen. The tigers, far from threatening, were images of her own disowned vitality, fierce, erotic, instinctive. In waking life, she was soft-spoken, passive, eager to please. But beneath this persona lived a wildness, unexpressed and unclaimed. The domestic cat was her ally, but the tiger was her double. Together, they constellated her longing for a deeper independence, a psychic life not defined by others' needs. This is the paradox. We seek intimacy, yet fear being alone. We desire companionship, yet resent what we cannot dominate. The The cat remains beside us, but only if we allow it to be itself. This reflects a larger truth of the psyche. The self does not conform, it does not perform. It arrives on silent pause, and it must be welcomed as it is. In mythology, this tension is embodied by Freya, the Norse goddess of love, beauty, war, and death. She travels not by horse, but by chariot drawn by cats. These cats are not symbols of submission. They represent contradiction, sensual and savage, soft and dangerous, domestic and wild. They pull the chariot of a goddess who holds the paradox of the feminine divine. The cat, as her emblem, becomes the carrier of this paradox in our own psychic life. To live with a cat is to practice reverence for the unpossessed. It is a daily reminder that relationship is not about control, but presence, that we may love what we do not own, that we may dwell with what we do not fully understand. This is the beginning of inner maturity. The ego, by nature, seeks mastery. It wants to know, define, use. But the self is not an object. It is not a tool. It is a center of meaning that transcends the ego's grasp. The cat, when allowed to be symbolic, reveals this. It rests in the center of the house, the psyche, unbothered by our needs, unconcerned with our interpretations. It simply is. And that being calls us inward. There is a sacred lesson in the way a cat lies in sunlight. It does not calculate. It does not strategize. It surrenders to warmth, to rest, to being. This is not laziness. It is instinctual wisdom. And for those of us driven by anxiety, achievement, and endless motion, the cat becomes a subtle protest. It teaches without words. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be. You are allowed to live without justification. The cat also interrupts. It leaps onto counters, knocks over glasses, sits atop keyboards. These are not merely behaviors, they are symbols. Archetypally, they reflect the intrusion of instinct into a life too tightly governed by ego. They disrupt order, not out of spite, but to rebalance the field, to say, something wild still lives here. In one case, a man meticulously organized his life, every object in place, every hour scheduled. He lived alone, save for his cat. Yet the cat persistently knocked over one particular sculpture, an abstract piece he had always said meant nothing. In analysis, he dreamt of a storm smashing his perfect home. The message became clear. His psyche demanded chaos, not destruction, but renewal. The cat, by disrupting the inert object, became the soul's messenger. The unpossessed soul cannot be scheduled. It must be courted, honored. It must be lived in relationship. This is why the cat does not obey, because it symbolizes that which must remain free within you, the part that prays in secret, the part that loves without reason, the part that dreams without permission. The danger of one-sidedness, of becoming too identified with consciousness, too dissociated from instinct. The result is neurosis, imbalance, dryness of soul. The cat, symbolically, is the medicine for this, not by healing us, but by returning us to what we abandoned, our own interior life. And so we return to the gaze. The cat sitting across the room, watching you, not judgmentally, but completely. It does not ask you to perform. It does not care about your achievements. It sees you as you are. And in that gaze, you are invited to see yourself, not through the eyes of the world, but through the mirror of the soul. What in you still waits to be free? What part of your psyche sits unclaimed in the corner of your awareness? What instincts have you denied? What intuitions silenced? What truths ignored? The cat does not answer, it waits. And in that waiting, it teaches. We now descend from the waking world into the landscape of night, the realm of the dream, where the cat walks most powerfully. For in dreams, the cat does not merely appear as an animal. It becomes guide, gatekeeper, guardian of thresholds the ego dares not cross. It watches from shadowed corners of the psyche, demanding not obedience but encounter. Let us follow. Part 4, Dreams of Cats, the psychic guide in the shadows. When the cat enters the dream, something in the soul stirs that cannot be explained by logic. The image is never merely decoration. It carries weight. Its movement or stillness, its presence or absence, its gaze or retreat, all are charged with symbolic force. To dream of a cat is not to see an animal. It is to be visited by a fragment of the unknown. The unconscious, as I have often written, does not speak in language. It speaks in symbol, and animals are among its most ancient words. In dreams, the cat arrives not as a cipher to be interpreted, but as a presence to be related to. It is neither friend nor foe, but a messenger, a question, a mirror. and the question it asks is always the same. Will you follow what you cannot control? I recall a patient, young, ambitious, constantly seeking clarity and mastery over his path. He came to analysis not out of suffering, but out of a strange hollowness. His dreams were at first sterile, rooms without windows, tasks without meaning, until one night a cat appeared. In the dream, a small gray cat lay curled at the foot of a spiral staircase. The patient approached, but the cat neither moved nor fled. It simply opened its eyes and stared. In that moment, he said, he felt both dread and peace. It was like something knew me, he whispered, but not as I know myself. This dream marked the turning point. The staircase led downward, not upward, and the cat's position was no accident. It guarded the descent, not as a threat, but as a guide. In myth and in the unconscious, this is the role of the psychopomp, the soul guide who leads the ego through shadow into depth. The cat, in this dream, played Hermes cloaked in fur. We often think of psychopomps as winged, radiant, angelic. But the unconscious does not favor sentimentality. It chooses forms that bypass the ego's resistance. And the cat, stealthy, nocturnal, attuned to silence, makes the perfect vehicle for such guidance. It does not explain, it moves. And if you follow, you descend. In many dreams, the cat is associated with doorways, staircases, basements, symbolic structures that represent transitions into deeper layers of the psyche. One patient dreamt repeatedly of a sleeping cat curled beside a trapdoor in her childhood home. She never dared to open it. I'm afraid of what's below, she admitted, but the cat never leaves. In analysis, it became clear the cat was not keeping her out. It was keeping vigil, waiting for her readiness. The trapdoor led to repressed trauma, ancestral grief, truths long buried beneath the floorboards of consciousness. And the cat, unmoving, unafraid, offered silent permission to begin. Such is the nature of the cat in dreams. It does not force. It does not compel. It invites. It appears when the psyche is ripening for depth work. When the soul, having endured enough surface living, begins to call the ego downward. The qualities of the cat in dreams matter. Is it asleep or alert, wounded or strong? Many dreamers report being scratched or bitten by cats, often to their confusion. But this is not attack. This is the soul's protest at having been ignored. The scratch is symbolic, a rupture of the ego's surface, a call to feel, to attend. Consider the dream of a woman nearing midlife. She dreamt of walking through a museum of masks, each one a face she had worn at some point in her life. Daughter, lover, professional, mother. In the final room, she saw a black cat sitting atop a shattered mask, blood pooled beneath. The cat licked its paw, indifferent. In waking life, she was undergoing a quiet crisis. Everything she had built was collapsing. Identity, marriage, career. The dream did not offer comfort. It offered truth. The cat, surrounded by broken images of her persona, represented not cruelty, but clarity. The self was watching. The blood was real. The pain of being seen without the mask. And the cat was not her enemy. It was her only witness. This is crucial. In the realm of dreams, the cat often appears during transitions of identity, particularly when the old self is dying and the new has not yet emerged. It marks the in-between, the liminal, the space where nothing is certain and yet everything is possible. Such spaces are dangerous for the ego. It prefers definition, control. The cat offers neither. It watches, it waits, and this waiting is unbearable to those who live in urgency. But to those willing to endure uncertainty, the cat becomes guide. It is not uncommon for the cat in dreams to grow, shrink, speak, or transform. One man dreamt of a cat that, when touched, turned into water. Another saw his childhood cat with wings. Another watched as a dead cat resurrected and walked away. These are not surreal details. They are transformations of the image in service of psychic evolution. The cat, as symbol, is fluid. It carries the meaning the dreamer most needs. Water, emotion, wings, transcendence, resurrection, renewal. The unconscious tailors the image to the soul's deepest cry. And yet not all cat dreams are mystical. Some are mundane, feeding a cat, chasing one, watching it sleep. But even here, the symbolic is present. Feeding may indicate nourishment of intuition, chasing, the pursuit of an elusive truth, watching, the desire to relate without possessing. The color of the cat may also carry meaning. Black cats, often feared, represent what the culture has exiled: superstition, feminine power, hidden knowledge. White cats may symbolize innocence, spiritual guidance, or suppressed ideals. Orange cats, fire and vitality. Gray cats, ambiguity, subtlety, shadow. But beyond all analysis lies the encounter. One does not decode a cat dream. One relates to it, lives with it, asks again and again, what part of me is being shown here? What have I not seen that this animal sees? In my own life, I have dreamt of cats often. Sometimes they lead, sometimes they disappear. Once, I dreamt of a cat sitting on the book I was trying to read, refusing to move. When I finally stopped trying to push it away, it curled into my lap and purred. I awoke weeping. The book was theory, the cat, presence. The unconscious had spoken. Stop reading, start relating. The unconscious is compensatory. It balances the one-sidedness of the ego. And in a culture of noise, speed, and reason, the cat appears as silence, slowness, instinct. It does not perform. It returns us to the body, the breath, the moment. In some dreams, the cat is not alone. It leads other animals, guards a child, or follows the dreamer silently. In such cases, it represents integration. The once feared instinct is now companion. The dreamer, by walking beside the cat, is no longer at war with their own soul. The cat may also appear wounded, limping, bleeding, dying. These dreams often reflect a neglect of the inner world. The dreamer, caught in outward focus, has starved the symbolic life. The cat suffers. But this is not despair, it is invitation. The dream says, care for what you have forgotten. And if the dreamer does, the cat may return whole. There is a final kind of dream I must mention, the dream of the cat who speaks, rare but profound. One patient dreamt of a white cat who sat upon her chest and whispered, "You must not leave yet." The dream came during a period of deep depression, bordering on suicidality. The cat's words were not dramatic. They were clear, present, and they saved her. And this is the highest function of the dream cat, not as guide, but as guardian of life. It emerges from the self, clothed in feline form, to speak what cannot be said in waking life. It reminds us, you are not alone. The soul watches, even when you cannot feel it. And so, I say, when the cat enters your dream, do not analyze too quickly. Sit with it, walk with it, watch what it does not say, let its silence teach you, let its gaze burn through you. Do not look away, do not rush to explain. The cat is not an answer, it is a threshold. It carries you, if you are willing, to what lies beneath. We now approach the moment when the ego must loosen its grip. For all symbols, when truly encountered, do not merely instruct, they transform, and none more so than the cat, whose very being refuses the ego's demand for dominance. To live with a cat is to undergo a subtle, daily confrontation with unpredictability, sovereignty, and the dissolution of the illusion of control. Let us descend. Part 5, Cats and the Dissolution of Ego Control. The ego, noble, necessary, but limited, longs for control. It seeks mastery over the world, the self, and others. It names, defines, structures, and measures. It builds walls of language and ladders of time. And then a cat walks into the room. It leaps onto the counter you just cleaned. It sleeps on the work you meant to complete. It scratches the door you just closed. It breaks the vase you once thought sacred. And what does it mean? Not that the cat disrespects your efforts, but that the psyche will not be ruled. The presence of a cat in one's life is the presence of something unpredictable, something sovereign, something that will not be trained. This is not rebellion, it is autonomy. It is the soul reminding the ego, you are not king here. And this reminder, repeated through small acts, is not minor. It is initiatory. In symbolic terms, the cat becomes a messenger of the unconscious, a carrier of the wild interior that civilization represses. It does not bark when summoned. It does not perform tricks. It responds to something deeper, an unseen rhythm, an invisible mood, a private knowing. And the ego, accustomed to being obeyed, is unsettled. One patient, a woman with perfectionist tendencies, came into analysis burdened by a constant sense of failure. No matter how carefully she arranged her life, something always slipped beyond her grasp. Her home was immaculate, her schedule precise, her appearance curated, but her cat refused to cooperate. Every day, it disrupted her order. It knocked over objects, scratched doors, meowed at odd hours. She found herself seething. Why can't it behave? She asked. But we soon saw it was not the cat that was misaligned. It was the expectation of total order, the demand that life fit into lines and boxes. The cat constellated the psyche's protest against this tyranny. In a dream, she saw the cat shatter a porcelain mask she had worn. It was my face, she said, but I wasn't inside it. The message was clear. The cat, through its chaos, was freeing her from a false identity. The soul wanted presence, not perfection. The mask, persona, had outlived its function, and the cat had been its quiet dismantler. This is not accidental. In alchemical imagery, such trickster disruption belongs to Mercurius, the spirit of transformation, the quicksilver that slips through grasping hands. Mercurius is not polite. He does not knock before entering. He arrives in riddles, in contradictions, in laughter that cracks the ego's shell. And the cat, in its refusal to conform, often carries his presence. Cats knock things over. They interrupt rituals. They sprawl across sacred objects. They insert themselves into moments of solemnity. This is not mischief. This is symbolic disruption. The unconscious does not respect your boundaries when those boundaries suffocate the soul. A cat walking across your meditation cushion is not an accident. It is the soul reminding you that control is not presence, that spiritual life cannot be forced, that silence must be inhabited, not performed. The cat, in this moment, becomes the archetype of sacred interruption. In mythology, this function appears again and again. Trickster figures, Loki, Hermes, Coyote, disrupt the order not to destroy it, but to reveal its incompleteness. And often they take animal form. The cat, when read symbolically, plays this role in our psychic household. It reminds us daily that life is not a formula, that the soul is not a spreadsheet, that real transformation comes through surrender, not strategy. And what of love? Many find the cat's aloofness painful. It doesn't love me, they say. But here is the deeper truth. The cat loves without losing itself. It does not offer affection on command. It offers it freely when it chooses. And in this, it teaches a higher form of love, one not based on control, but on reverence. The ego wishes to be adored. The soul wishes to be known. The cat knows this. It waits until you stop reaching. Then perhaps it comes close. There is a sacred image here. A cat sleeping on your chest, purring. It is not a reward, it is a blessing. A sign that the field has softened, that the control has eased, that presence has arrived. In this moment, you are no longer the master, you are the beloved. To live with a cat is to be in daily relation with the non-verbal, the intuitive, the untamed. It demands from you not obedience, but awareness, not dominance, but dialogue, not rule, but rhythm. You begin to notice mood, energy, pause, subtlety. This is the feminine way of knowing. And yet the ego resists. It wants the cat to behave, to act like a dog, to sit when told, to respond when called. But the cat does not yield. It walks away. It disappears. It returns on its own terms. And in doing so, it reveals the limits of the ego's world. Another case, a man obsessed with control. His life was efficient, his relationships transactional, his spirituality intellectualized. And then he adopted a cat. At first, he tried to train it, then to ignore it. But one night, the cat climbed onto his bed and bit his hand. Hard. He was furious. The dream that followed was vivid. He stood before a river trying to build a dam, but the water rose and swept him away. The cat, sitting on the shore, watched him calmly. The message was undeniable. The psyche would no longer tolerate damming. The flood was coming. The cat, as symbolic agent, had triggered the breakdown of artificial control, and in its place came feeling. Chaos, grief, aliveness. This is what cats offer, not comfort, but confrontation, not obedience, but initiation. They break the spell of the orderly self and invite the messy, sacred real. They are not spiritual companions because they are peaceful. They are spiritual because they are true. And so we must ask, what in me refuses to obey? What in me cannot be scheduled, predicted, owned? What in me knocks over the sacred object, not to profane it, but to reveal its hollowness? The cat does not answer these questions. It lives them. And if we are willing to live them too, the ego begins to soften. The house of the self becomes less rigid. The masks crack, the control loosens, and something real, something previously exiled, begins to move. The cat then becomes not pet but teacher, not symbol of comfort but of transformation. It teaches you to stop chasing. It teaches you to sit. It teaches you to see what watches you from the shadows. And in this seeing, something ancient is remembered. The soul is not yours to manage. It is yours to dwell with. Like a cat. Part 6, the feminine home and the feline spirit. The house, in dream and imagination, is not brick and timber. It is the soul's architecture. Each room, a psychic chamber. Each level, a layer of consciousness. The attic holds what we have lifted away and forgotten. The basement, what we have repressed and buried. The hearth, what still warms us. The doorway, what we are on the verge of encountering. And so, when a cat appears in the house, whether waking or dreaming, it is never just an animal in space. It is a symbol inhabiting the inner world. It marks presence in the invisible landscape of the feminine psyche. In feminine psychology, the home is not only safety, it is interiority, it is mystery, it is the symbolic womb, the vessel, the inner temple. It is where the soul withdraws, not to escape the world, but to re-enter it consciously. The home becomes a ritual space, a crucible for transformation, not through action, but through being. And the cat becomes its sentinel. I have sat with many women in analysis who lived alone with their cats, not in loneliness, but in a kind of quiet covenant. The cat was not a surrogate for relationship. It was a mirror for their solitude. It did not fill a void. It made the void sacred. Its presence marked the house as not merely a dwelling, but a field charged with presence, waiting, depth. One such woman came to me in her 60s, childless, unmarried, a life of books and beauty and silence. She had 3 cats, each with its own personality. Her dreams were rich, filled with doors behind doors, staircases leading nowhere, endless libraries. In one recurring dream, she followed one of her cats through the mirror above her fireplace. On the other side, a vast garden at night, flowers with no names, moonlight without source. Her cat would walk just ahead, never turning back. The mirror was not fantasy, it was threshold. The cat, not just pet, but guide into her own unlived life. The garden, her inner landscape, not yet explored. And the dream, repeated over years, was the psyche's call: follow what cannot be named. The cat in the house often appears in precisely this way, not as intruder, not as comforter, but as keeper of depth. It walks rooms that the ego has locked. It lies in sunlit spaces the conscious mind has long forgotten. It disappears under beds, into closets, behind curtains, marking the parts of the self still in shadow. Its movements are not random, they are ritual. And in myth, this function is not new. Consider Hestia, the Greek goddess of the hearth. She was the first to receive offering in every home, though she never left Olympus. She was presence, not in form, but in flame, the quiet center of the house, uncelebrated, but indispensable. The cat, often curled near the fire, echoes this archetype. It holds the warmth. It remembers the center. It requires nothing but your reverence. Yet here lies the danger, one I have seen often in both dreams and waking life: over-identification. When the ego fuses with the symbolic animal, when the woman becomes her cat, when the solitary becomes isolation, the archetype no longer heals, it possesses. What was mirror becomes mask. The cat, in this case, is no longer companion. It is a stand-in for unlived relatedness. A younger woman I once worked with, newly divorced, lived alone with 5 cats. Her dreams were full of mirrors, but no reflections. Empty chairs, clocks with no hands. She felt peace, she said, but in time it became clear she had replaced intimacy with safety. The cats were not symbols of her sovereignty, but her avoidance. In one pivotal dream, she followed a cat down a hallway that led to a wall. The cat passed through. She could not. She awoke weeping, not because of fear, because she knew she had followed instinct as far as she could without risking contact. Symbols are not to be inhabited. They are to be related to. The cat in the house is sacred, but it is not sufficient. It may reflect the soul's depth, but it cannot replace the soul's need for encounter. The mirror must be looked through, not lived in. In dream after dream, the cat marks a room where something waits. Sometimes it guards a child, sometimes a flame, sometimes a wound, but always it asks, will you come closer? Will you enter? Will you see? And the feminine psyche must decide not whether to serve others, but whether to descend. Whether to meet herself not in projection, not in fantasy, but in presence. The cat leads, but only so far. The final steps must be taken alone. In this sense, the house becomes both sanctuary and initiatory chamber. The cat is its voice. If the cat hides, something is being hidden. If the cat sits at the window, something longs for the beyond. If the cat howls at night, something in the soul refuses silence. I once worked with a patient whose cat would not sleep unless every door in the house was open. She found this strange until she began dreaming of locked doors, each one labeled with a name she had never spoken aloud: grief, longing, rage, wonder. Her analysis became the process of opening them. The cat, quite literally, had sensed the soul's need to be unsealed. This is not mystical, it is symbolic. And symbolism, when lived consciously, becomes transformation. The feminine home is not defined by design, but by depth. It is not where one escapes, but where one meets. The cat, when allowed to live symbolically, becomes the presence that ensures the meeting occurs, not just between rooms, but between soul and self. There is a reason the cat curls at your feet when you cry, or paces when something is wrong, or stares into the corner of the room when no one is there. These are not tricks, they are gestures, invitations. The cat sees what you deny, it listens to what you repress, it embodies what you silence. And so when the cat disappears, one must ask, what in me has gone silent? When the cat becomes restless, one must ask, what in me refuses stillness? When the cat watches from the doorway, one must ask, what part of me is trying to return? In one of the final dreams of a long analysis, a woman saw herself sitting at her kitchen table alone. Her cat jumped onto the table and stared into her eyes. In that gaze, she saw her own face, but younger, weeping, laughing, alive. She awoke and knew her home was no longer a hiding place. It was a temple, not because of her decor, but because of what had returned, herself. We now approach the final chamber, the place where symbol becomes encounter, where image becomes integration. The cat has walked with us through myth, through home, through dream. It has led us through the corridors of instinct, mystery, and shadow, and now it sits unmoving at the threshold, not asking for anything, simply being. The ego stands before it, no longer in command, but in presence. And what lies beyond is not concept, not doctrine, not definition. It is the self, and the cat, in its silent gaze, is the final image before wholeness. Part 7, the cat and the self, threshold to wholeness. The self does not arrive with trumpets. It does not descend in blinding revelation. It arrives in symbol, in silence, in paradox, and often in the still eyes of an animal we have known all our lives but never truly seen. The self cannot be summoned. It cannot be built or earned. It can only be approached. And the cat, living symbol of the mysterious, autonomous, instinctual feminine, marks the place where this approach becomes possible. For the self is not the ego enlarged. It is not a perfected version of the persona. It is not the best version of ourselves, as the modern mind so foolishly proclaims. The self is the ordering principle of the psyche, the totality, that which was, is, and will be, that which includes both light and shadow, masculine and feminine, wound and healer. And in dreams and waking life alike, it often announces itself not with force but with gaze. A man once came to the end of a long and harrowing analysis. He had descended into depression, passed through rage, grief, the chaos of meaninglessness, and had emerged into a space of quiet he did not yet understand. He no longer sought answers, he no longer sought control, he simply was. And then came the dream. He lay on a stone floor, unable to move, filled with both peace and exhaustion. A white cat approached and curled upon his chest. It placed one paw gently on his heart. Its eyes met his, and in that gaze there was no command, no question, no fear, only being. He wept in the dream. He wept in waking. When he described the dream, his voice trembled. It wasn't just a cat, he said. It was everything I've been searching for, and it didn't say a word. I nodded, for I knew he had met the self, not as concept, not as dogma, but as presence. The white cat, symbol of purity, integration, lunar knowing, had come not to lead, but to dwell. Its appearance marked the end of seeking, the return to being. The threshold had been crossed. This is what the cat reveals at its highest function. Not instinct alone, not mystery alone, but the meeting point between the known and the unknown. It dwells in that in-between place. It neither flees nor demands, it invites. And the ego, if it is wise, stops striving and sits. There is a great illusion that must die before this moment can be reached. The illusion that the self can be controlled. The self cannot be managed. It cannot be predicted. It cannot be possessed. Like the cat, it moves in rhythm with something older than thought. It comes when it comes. And when it comes, it rearranges everything. To those still caught in persona, the cat is a nuisance. To those over-identified with the shadow, it is an enemy. But to those who have endured the spiral, who have wandered through projection, possession, grief, silence, the cat becomes a symbol of sacred arrival. In the final stages of analysis, I have seen this again and again, the dream of the cat, not scratching, not guiding, but watching, sitting, resting. And in this dream, there is no more conflict. The dreamer no longer chases or flees. They sit, they breathe, they meet. This meeting is not verbal. It is not explained. It is experienced. The cat, in that moment, becomes the entire psyche, and the dreamer, watching the cat, watches themselves, not their role, not their ambition, themselves, as they truly are, before name, before wound, before history. And in this gaze, healing occurs, not through insight, but through presence. The self does not heal by solving. It heals by including. The cat in this way becomes symbol of wholeness, not through perfection, but through refusal to split. It carries wildness and calm, solitude and intimacy, detachment and devotion. It is not this or that. It is this and that. And thus it reflects the self. There is a moment in every journey when the seeking ends, when the tools are put down, when the maps are burned, when the dreamer realizes there is nowhere else to go but here. The cat often arrives in this moment, as if to say, you are home, not the home of childhood, not the home of persona, but the home of the inner world, the soul's dwelling place, the place where all parts are allowed to exist, where the rejected is reclaimed, where the wound is not erased but woven in. In one of my own dreams long ago, I stood in a room of stone and fire. I was alone. I had let go of everything, books, beliefs, even identity. And then from the shadows, a black cat walked forward. It did not speak. It rubbed against my leg, curled around my feet, and lay down. I knelt. I placed my hand upon its back, and I wept, not from sorrow, but from return. The cat did not save me. It did not guide me. It simply was. And in its being, I remembered myself. This is the power of the symbol when lived, not interpreted, but encountered. And so we return to the first image, the cat in the center of the room, still, unmoving, watching. It does not come to be tamed. It comes to teach presence. That what it teaches is not how to live, but how to be, how to sit, how to listen, how to dwell in the moment where all opposites meet and dissolve. To understand what the cat says about you is not to analyze its behavior, but to listen symbolically, to notice where it rests, where it watches, when it comes, when it leaves. To see the cat is to see the psyche in motion, silent, sensual, sovereign. It is not here to serve. It is not here to entertain. It is here to reveal. And in its gaze, the final truth emerges. You were never meant to master yourself. You were meant to meet yourself again and again. In the silence, in the breath, in the gaze of the cat.